Hi, my name is Puriya Darakhshanfar and I'm a PhD student at Delft University of Technology. In this video, I will talk about our study, which was first published in the Empirical Software Engineering Journal. This study is about a benchmark-based evaluation of search-based crash reproduction. When a user operates a piece of software, it is always possible that he or she makes the software crash. In the crash report, we usually have a stack trace, which indicates the active method calls during the crash happening. Here we can see an example for a reported crash in an open issue tracking system. In this example, in addition to stack trace, we have an extra description representing the scenario in which the crash happened. Writing a test case that reproduces the exact same stack trace by following this scenario can help developers in debugging. Also, this test case can be used later as a regression test to make sure that this bug will not reappear in the next releases. However, this kind of information is usually not available in the reported issues, so writing a crash reproducing test case is a labor-intensive and time-taking task. Also, as mentioned by one of our industrial partners, it needs a knowledgeable developer. Several automated techniques have been introduced to automate crash reproduction. One of these approaches is EvoCrash, which is a search-based software testing technique. This approach takes the reported stack trace and the application in which the crash happened as input. It also takes one of the frames in the stack trace as the target frame. Then it tries to generate a test case reproducing the crash from the target frame. As an example, if we set the target frame to 3, EvoCrash generates a test case that reproduces the first 3 frames of the given stack trace. A study shows that EvoCrash is the best performing technique in terms of crash reproduction. However, the benchmark used for this study contains 54 crashes that 46 of them can be reproduced by EvoCrash, so it does not reveal the limitations of this approach in the hard-to-reproduce crashes. So in this study, we wanted to design a benchmark for this goal. We defined 4 requirements for our benchmark. All of the projects used in the benchmark should be open source. All of them should be under active maintenance. Stack traces should indicate the version of the project in which the crash happened. The benchmark should contain both small and large projects and stack traces. The closest existing benchmarks that we found for these requirements are DefX4J and SF110. However, by looking at the stack traces in DefX4J, we can see that most of the time, the stack traces in this benchmark are small. Also, most of the projects in SF110 are not updated after 2010. So, we designed JCrashBack, a dedicated benchmark for crash reproduction, with our 4 requirements. JCrashBack contains 200 hard-to-reproduce crashes, which are collected from 3 sources: Xwiki, a large open-source wiki system; Elasticsearch, which is among the 10 most popular projects in GitHub. Finally, we carved only interesting failures in DefX4J, which are representing a crash. We excluded the stack traces stemming from JUnit failures as well. These crashes are coming from 7 projects with various sizes. In this table, you can see the average number of statements in different versions of each project. Also, these crashes have different types of exceptions. The most common one is null pointer exception with 48 crashes. We also implemented an experiment runner for applying crash reproduction approaches on JCrashBack. This infrastructure helps researchers to run crash reproduction tools in parallel threads. The outputs of each execution are execution logs of the approach, the crash reproducing test case, and a CSV file representing the performance of the search process. Since other approaches are not openly available, we only used EvoCrash for our empirical evaluation. We applied EvoCrash to each relevant frame in stack traces. Here, relevant frames are the one which points to a class in the software under test. Due to the randomness in search-based algorithms, we repeated each execution for 10 times. We set the time budget to 15 minutes. So in total, our evaluation contains 18,590 executions. In this evaluation, we tried to answer 3 research questions. The first question evaluates the performance of EvoCrash in reproducing the crashes in JCrashBack. The second one analyzes the impact of project and exception types on the outcome of EvoCrash. The third question investigates the main challenges in reproducing the hard-to-reproduce crashes. Let's look at the results for research question 1. In total, EvoCrash can reproduce 87 crashes from at least one of their target frames. However, by looking at the number of frames that can be reproduced, the results are worse. Only 171 frames can be reproduced by EvoCrash. We observed that EvoCrash has a better chance to reproduce crashes with fewer frames. For RQ2, we observed that EvoCrash is more successful in reproducing crashes in simpler projects like Commons-Lang and Commons-Math. However, the reproduction rate reduces in larger and more complex projects such as Elasticsearch. EvoCrash can reproduce various types of exceptions. However, we observed that the number of iterations needed for reproducing non-trivial scenarios like class cast exception needs a more complex input generation. thereby reproducing them is more costly. We saw that EvoCrash cannot reproduce many crashes, so we manually analyzed the source code, EvoCrash execution log, and the fitest-generated test cases in unsuccessful executions to characterize the challenges. Given the high number of unsuccessful executions, this analysis took about 4 person-months. The results of our manual analysis is openly available on GitHub. We mapped the challenges in 13 categories. Some of these challenges are related to the general search-based test generation issues. For instance, generating complex inputs for the class under test is a known challenge for automated test generation. But some of them are dedicated to crash reproduction. For instance, if the exception is captured by try-catch, the search process cannot detect that exception, and thereby it cannot indicate whether the generated test case can reproduce the given crash. After this study, we also implemented a search-based crash reproduction framework called BotSync. This tool is well tested and we are actively adding new features to address the detected challenges in this study. Thank you very much for watching this video. Have a nice virtual ICSE and goodbye.